all the evidence that I'm presenting in the book, this evidence clearly shows that this materialist view of mind and consciousness, it's not valid anymore, and it's erroneous, and we need to change. We need to switch in terms of paradigm. Paradigm is the big grand theory, if you will. So it means that everything that is going on at the mental level will influence what is happening in the brain, and by virtue of its connections with all the physiological systems in the body, what is happening mentally will exert an influence also in the immune system, cardiovascular system, the endocrine systems with the hormones, and so on and so forth. So we have more power than we think.
I am really excited to share with you my new association with ControlYourHealth.care. I have been literally searching for a solution like this for at least 2 decades. Did you know that over 900 plus diseases are simply due to nutrition? That problems such as heartburn, insomnia, asthma, infertility, dementia, Alzheimer's, thyroid disease, and so many more can be solved if you just correct your mineral or vitamin deficiencies? ControlYourHealth.care has answers for you for these ailments and so many more that is based on decades of research, including over 26,000 autopsies, 10 million blood chemistries by over 15,000 holistic doctors and scientists. You will see how the right, highly absorbable nutrients that your body is craving will make a huge difference in how you feel. Go to ControlYourHealth.care and enjoy 10% off through the end of November. Start now on a journey towards superior health that will literally change your life. Welcome to Business Game Changers. I'm Sarah Westall. I have a really interesting show. We're going to talk about the proof that God exists and spirituality exists, and that there's more to us than just a functioning brain and a body, and that science is proving it. I always say that science is just the study of what is, and that when they use science to prove something doesn't exist by ignoring data, like you have to ignore a lot of data to say that God doesn't exist or spirituality doesn't exist, or that we're just a bag of, cells in this meat suit, if you will, and that there isn't more to us. There isn't this energy field around us and all these things. You have to ignore all that. That's not science. Science, I believe, is just a study of what is. And as we learn more, we incorporate more into science. We learn more what science is about. And eventually it'll describe what everything's about. But the quest and the time to get there is going to take a long time because we're not that smart. I mean, some of us are smart, but not really in the grand scheme. But anyways, this is just an amazingly interesting show. And I have Dr. Mario Beauregard coming to the show. He's a neuroscientist, and he's been studying this for a long time. And it's just such a fascinating talk that we have. He has a new book out on this subject, and I really suggest that you go and check out his work on his website that I have listed below. Check out what his book is about. It's about the reality and the end of materialism, and that materialism is not truth. For those of you that have been following this type of work and have always looking into, consciousness and spirituality and energy work, you should find this as really fascinating. And those of you who haven't, I think it might even be more fascinating because it might open up a new window for you of, what the facts are around this. And that, for all those that are out there that are atheists, you might want to rethink some of these things because this really shows that we're more than just a bag of bones. It's really quite cool. So before we get into the show, I want to tell you about 2 specials that we have going on for Christmas. And one is Dr. Glidden. If you get a foundation pack at ControlYourHealth.care, you get 1 month membership to Dr. Glidden's service, which will help you see how they have over 90 ailments there and help you see how nutrition can solve so much of your problems. Most medical problems out there, not all, but most, have nutritional deficiencies at its core. And this can really help somebody get over those problems. It's a gift of health for Christmas. And then the next one is telomere lengthening. Of course, I have the 15% off, but for Christmas, they're giving the 15% off if you buy a bottle of the telomere lengthener gel caps. It's a 3-month supply of that. You will also get a hand cream. So if you know somebody whose hands don't like their hands and they want their hands to look younger, it's a really great gift. I also have the latest studies coming out of Korea and how it helps lengthen your telomeres and changes your biological age. It's really a fascinating study they did. So you can see that at sarahwestall.com under shop. And when you're there, make sure you sign up for my newsletter. It's the best way to stay in touch with everything I do. And lastly, Dr. Mario, he stays after and does another little special segment for my members. So if you're not a member yet, please go and sign up at sarahwestall.com. It's on the bottom of every page. Or Ebonier, you just said sign up for Ebonier. Ebonier is my social media membership, or sarahwestall.tv is my video membership. And they both have videos, but you can see that exclusive on either one. So let's get into my show with Dr. Mario Beauregard. Hi, Mario. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
I am so excited. You are a doctor, you're a neuroscientist, right? Who is focusing on not material science, but on what is beyond, what we really are beyond the material.
Exactly.
And yeah, and you wrote a book about it. Can you talk about, the book is Expanding Reality, the Emergence of Post-Materialistic Science. And can you talk about at a broad level what the book's about?
Well, in this book, I'm presenting what we call lines of evidence in science. So various types of research of scientific data. When you put them all together, you realize that the central dogma of neuroscience, the central dogma of neuroscience, it's been around for about over a century now. And it's the idea that the brain produces what we call mind and consciousness. And even all of our human experiences, including spiritual experiences with, for instance, non-physical entities. So for neuroscience, mainstream neuroscience, and this central dogma, all of our experiences are simply reducible, or we can associate them simply to electrical and chemical processes in the brain. And all the evidence that I'm presenting in the book, this evidence clearly shows that this materialist view of mind and consciousness, it's not valid anymore, and it's erroneous, and we need to change. We need to switch in terms of a paradigm. Paradigm is the big grand theory, if you will, to understand all these phenomena. And I'm referring to phenomena like near-death experience, for instance, but during clinical death, when there's no brain activity and you cannot and you don't breathe anymore, and you have lots of cases of people where they've been able to experience things while they were clinically dead. So that's one line of evidence, but there are also what is called psi phenomena, or parapsychology phenomena. These phenomena have been investigated by researchers for over a century now, and they have shown consistently, and because we have thousands of studies now, so we can put the results of all these studies together, and we do what we call in statistics meta-analysis. So if you want to determine if a given phenomena is true or not, you take lots of studies. For instance, you can take 50, 100, sometimes 1,000, 2,000 studies. You put them together to verify the strength of the effect or the phenomena that you're exploring. And that's how now we know that it's possible to exchange information mentally at a distance without using our senses. And this is called telepathy.
Yeah, and we just do it,
Oh,
right? I
yeah.
mean, because a lot of us have experienced it, and all of a sudden, my husband and I do it all the
Yeah.
time, where all
Uh-huh.
of a sudden he'll just finish my sentence, or he'll say, "Well, yeah, that's what I mean," and I didn't even say anything to him. I mean, it happens a lot. So basically, people have to ignore so much data to believe in this materialistic science that they're following, right? I mean, it's the only way that this has lasted for 100 years is you have to really ignore a lot
Yes.
of other things.
Yes, and you have the some scientists, but also other people, sometimes philosophers or other people coming from different areas of society, but they call them skeptics. But in reality, they're not real skeptics, because skepticism is something good, because you have to you want to be certain of what you're talking about, or you need to verify experimentally a given phenomenon. But these skeptics are pseudo skeptics, and they are professional debunkers essentially, and they try to debunk all of these phenomena because they are very attached emotionally to their worldview, which is materialist and atheist as well. And they are very well organized. So they target, for instance, Wikipedia websites when these websites refer to the work of scientists working in the field of, for instance, parapsychology, or working in the field of near-death research, and so on and so forth. And so it's like a culture war, and it's been going around for several decades now. And but there's a an openness that is emerging in my field, neuroscience, compared to when I started 30 some years ago. And now more and more neuroscientists are admitting overtly, and that's very new, that we don't really understand mind consciousness, and that perhaps consciousness is something elemental or primary in the universe. It's perhaps something more fundamental than matter, or as fundamental as matter. And this is discussed in the book.
Well, one thing you said is that, as I've been reading through this, is that you were saying that all religions started at the root of most religions, not all, you said it, most religions are MEs, you call them. What is an ME?
A mystical experience. So a mystical experience is, if you will, a deeper form of spiritual experience, and it's an experience in which the experiencer realizes that he is one with everything in the universe, including sometimes the source of the universe that we call God, or the All, or the Allah, or, depends on, but it's the one, and you find that all the time. So it's an experience that is also beyond the usual space time, and the sense of personality, the small self of the experiencer usually will vanish for a while during the experience.
And it transforms them, right?
Yes, when we follow them long term, yes, it brings psycho spiritual transformation. Yes.
Well, one of the people that you quoted was an atheist, and she was saying that she had this experience, and after it she said, I did not define myself in terms of my culture, my gender, my beliefs, and the color of my skin anymore. I now perceive myself as a spark of cosmic consciousness incarnated in a member of the human species. Yes. She felt that she touched God, essentially. And exactly. Yeah, and totally transformed her. And this is what I always say is, why do we have all these differences and these barriers because what she put in this one quote, I'm like, that's exactly how we have to look at ourselves. I find your book and what you're studying one of the most important things out there, period, of what you're trying to do. And that's saying that science does not say that God doesn't exist, and that the atheists who believe it so strongly have to ignore a lot of data to embrace that idea. And obviously, an atheist who believes so strongly has not had the experience she had. I mean, she was an atheist and she was just totally transformed. But your book goes into all sorts of stuff. You go into the evidence, and you have clinical, empirical, and statistical evidence, and you show it by what consciousness must be fundamental, and that you show experiences, and you also show how if we only look at it as a materialistic paradigm, we can't move science to the next level. We aren't going to get to a lot of the stuff that I talk about with frequency. We talk a lot about frequency and energy that's outside our body. I have scientists that talk about water, how they have 2 vials of water and they split it and put it in England and one here, and the water changes at the same time. But that's all quantum physics, right? It's our lack of understanding of quantum physics that that's going to transform the entire world. If you're a materialistic scientist, you are ignoring quantum physics.
Exactly, because the quantum physics was the first post-materialist science in reality, and it happened a century ago. But it has not been, the implications of quantum physics, they've not been integrated within science, biology, for instance, and medicine. Not yet. It's not been done yet. It's beginning. So we're starting to talk about quantum biology or quantum medicine, but it's just beginning. It will take some time. But there's a transition. We're in a period of transition.
Yes, we are. And I think that I have some show that's coming up too. Actually, I'll probably air before this one about quantum healing and and frequency. And it really looks like, to get past this vaccine nightmare that we're in, the damage from it, we're going to need to use this. That's a technology that's going to save people. I just see the sad part is we're just not sure if enough people are going to embrace it because it's not part of mainstream science yet.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, so it becomes a matter of personal belief then. And
instead of, it shouldn't be a matter of personal belief,
no.
right? Science shouldn't be a personal, but your book, I got to get back. Your book is so amazing. Do you mind if I just go through like chapter by chapter and you can give us some, I mean, because I just think it's your chapter 1, you end with, you end with journeys to the source. So I actually end with conclusion, but you end with journeys to the source. Of course, I jumped right to chapter 8, which is journeys to the source. I love that because I wanted to hear what you say, but I want to start for the show. I want to start with chapter 1, which is thoughts that transform the body. So basically our thoughts can transform our body. Can you talk about that?
Yes. For a long time, because of this materials view, which was dominant, we thought that thoughts or emotions, memories were only electrical and chemical activity in the brain, but that's not so. And so I've done myself, I was among the first neuroscientists to use functional brain imagery to see a type of scanner to see what's going on in the brain. And so one of the first experiments that I've done, even before the turn of the new millennium, and it became famous, I wanted to show that what we think as our thoughts have a very significant power over what's going on in our brain. And to do that, we presented emotionally charged films. The first study was done with erotic film clips. And we did that with a group of university students, all males. We did that because we anticipated that there was going to be a big reaction in the emotional portion of the brain, and that's exactly what we saw. But In the experimental condition, that was very interesting because all of these guys, 12 guys, didn't have any practice in terms of meditation. They didn't know what mindfulness was. And so we taught them for about 30 minutes to become mindful. And then we put them in the scanner, and we asked them to watch the erotic film clips, but this time as a detached observer, like they do in mindfulness meditation. You just watch what's going on in terms of your mental activity, but with detachment as a passive observer, if you will. And when they did that, all the enormous reactivity of the brain regions in the emotional portion of the brain, it did stop almost completely. So that was the first demonstration that mind does matter, uh, using a scanner, fMRI scanner, functional magnetic resonance imaging.
So they weren't just animals at that point. They weren't just so, you know,
Yeah,
they
exactly.
could control themselves. No, but that's an
Yes,
important for
that was
men.
the point. Yes,
That's very important, is for them to be able to not be affected, because they can be manipulated quite easily
oh
due to
yes,
that
of course.
issue.
Yeah.
And if they can separate, they can control themselves. I mean, that's
Hmm.
the practical
Yes.
analysis of that.
Yeah,
But you took it as our ability to be able to, I mean, we can be separate from our animal instincts.
exactly. That's what we were trying to investigate. And after that, we use the same protocol, but with other types of emotion like sadness and fear, and all with always the same results. And so that's so that it's called emotional self-regulation. This capacity that we have to, cope with certain emotions. And it's very important to know that because for a long, long time in psychology and neuroscience, people thought that we were totally controlled or determined by what was going on in the most primitive portions of our brain, the mammalian brain and the so-called reptilian brain also. But it is not true at all. We have a great power over what's going on in our brain, and our brain, the nervous system, is connected with all the other uh, major physiological systems in the body, like the immune system, the endocrine systems, and so on and so forth, and even the activity of genes, epigenetics. So it means that everything that is going on at the mental level will influence what is happening in the brain. And by virtue of its connections with all the physiological systems in the body, what is happening mentally will exert an influence also in the immune system, cardiovascular system, the endocrine systems with the hormones, and so on and so forth. So we have more power than we think.
Well, and that's what we're experiencing right now, is that
Hmm.
unless you're more aware and you can back up and see stuff, you can be very, very manipulated. And and
Absolutely.
science has come really far where they know how to manipulate people.
Hmm.
And I like it that it's chapter one, because it really is how how much our mind can be controlled or not controlled or
Hmm.
whatever. Well, let's
Yes.
talk about chapter two, because this is, each chapter gets a little bit more in depth. But
Right.
perceptions beyond space and time.
Yes.
What do you mean by that? That's hard for people to comprehend.
Hmm. Well, it means that uh, the mind can function. Usually, we have the impression that it functions or operates within the confines of our body, but it's possible to have thoughts, emotions, memories, a sense of personality outside the confines of the body, and that's the technical term is it's non-local mind or non-local consciousness. So it means that mind is not limited to the confines of the body. It can operate also outside of the limits of the body, and we see that during clinical death when people have the impression of, for instance, floating above their bodies, and they can perceive let's say they are in the surgery room at the hospital. Often they will report what the surgeons and the nurses were saying, the types of instruments that were used, and we have temporal markers for this. So because yeah, very often during a surgical intervention, everything is noted. So we know exactly at what time, what was done exactly, what kind of surgical instruments were used, and so on and so forth. And so that's how we call that veridical perception. So it means that somebody who is in a state of clinical death with no heartbeat can observe a scene, and so we have hundreds and hundreds of reports like that now. So
and they observe it as if they're looking down on it, right? Or from a different perspective.
Yes.
It's like, well, you couldn't even, if from your eyes laying down, you wouldn't even be able to see it from that perspective.
Exactly. And well, yeah, sometimes they will see a series of numbers on top of a piece of equipment that you cannot observe, that the medical doctors and the nurses do not have access to these things unless they go up there to check. But some of the reports have indicated that it's a panoramic form of visual perception, a 360 degree. And not only the experiencers will know what's going on if they are in a surgical room, for instance, but they can also travel to other rooms. They can see members of their family or friends waiting for the outcome of the surgical intervention, for instance, and they can detect the thoughts of the members of their family and their friends, or the thoughts of the doctors, the nurses, and so on and so forth. And this can be verified after the fact. So that's how we know that they can provide, the experiencers can provide what we call veridical information.
Yeah, it's just fascinating. And so many doctors, and you see a lot of videos on YouTube or wherever where doctors say they experience it over and over.
Yes.
And or nurses or people who take care of people before they die.
Yes.
They all say the same thing. It's just they could almost. I remember reading some things about nurses who hospice care who say they could tell when someone was going to die because suddenly they'd be talking to people they knew in their past. Or they would it would just change. They would change. The person would, and they knew that they were going to die soon.
Yeah, usually it starts with it's called deathbed visions, and it starts within a few days before the actual death, the transition of the person.
And it happens a lot. It's not.
Oh, yes.
That's why I'm saying you have to ignore the data to believe in the material because it happens all the time.
Yes.
Let's talk about the mind influencing matter because you see, there's the famous cases of people being able to bend spoons and interesting things, but we can do more than that. Can you talk about?
Yes. So because it's called psychokinesis, and you can move objects and talk like that. And now the scientists in this field, they prefer to study what they call micro psychokinesis. So they investigate micro phenomena instead of macro phenomena like bars, and they avoid this because in the past there have been people who got caught cheating. They had because they were illusionists, they were magicians, and so now they use totally a different approach. They very often they will use what is called random number generators, and these are like computer keys that you put in your microcomputer, and these keys will produce random series of zeros or one, and the researcher will ask the subjects to simply produce more zeros than ones or vice versa. Essentially, that's what they are doing. And when you put and there've been thousands of these studies because it's easy to conduct and replicate, and so now we have thousands of studies been which is been done like that for a few decades, and we know that it's an effect that is not terribly strong statistically, but it does exist, and it's reproducible across studies, and some people are better at it than others. So some people, for we don't understand yet why, they're more able to do that. There's one factor that we know of, and what is interesting to mention is that these generators are based on quantum processes. So we come back to quantum physics, and so when you don't influence the instrument, the device, you will get as many zeros as ones, or vice versa, if the device is well calibrated, of course. But when you want to intervene, you can produce an alteration. Sometimes it's 3% or 4-5% above normal distribution, so more zeros than ones, or vice versa. And in some cases, you can get more spectacular effects than that. And what we know so far is that if you're able to enter into a state of deep meditation, and you include the random device, the generator, within your space, a meditative space. I've seen that myself. I tested that when I was at the University of Montreal with a master meditator, Buddhist meditator, and he was able to influence the outcome for an entire session during 20 minutes. But and Dean Radin at the Institute of Neuroscience, he observed the same thing when he was trying to see if it was possible for people to influence what's going on in terms of waves, or when you have an optical instrument measuring whether an atomic or subatomic particle will behave as a wave or a particle. He observed exactly the same thing, that people with a lot of experience in meditation can focus their attention for a longer period of time. And attention seems to act as a kind of laser. So when you're not able to sustain attention, you produce very weak effects on the microphysical system. But if you're able to sustain attention for a longer period of time, you will produce more significant effects. So that's what we know so far.
Well, also we've learned that when you can be extremely focused, time slows down.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Yes.
some phenomena about that, and I like almost like you can get so much more done in a short period of time that would normally take you hours and hours.
That's
And
right.
it's kind of like when an athlete is in the zone for some reason,
Yep.
the whole scenario slows down.
It's called a flow state. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's tied to this. I saw, or I see the number 618 a lot. And this was a few years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and it's my birthday too, 618, which is interesting. But every morning and every night for 12 times during the week, I saw the number 618 on the clock. And that was the first time. I didn't ever think about stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was told, well, you're creating it, you're influencing it. I have scientist friends that tell me this. And I'm like, well, maybe now I am. Maybe now, because I see 18 all the time, not 618, I see 18 all the time. But when I first saw it, and then I realized, okay, this is weird, because it happened because it only happens 14 times in a week. And I saw it like 12 times. So that was like somebody giving me a message or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I didn't create this because I didn't know to create this. I've never had this before. Now I might be creating it because I see 18 all the time, but not then. And that was what was so interesting to me. But that gets into kind of number 8, chapter 8, which we maybe should wait to talk about. But I had to bring it up because there's influencing, like I could be creating my 18 now, but there's no way I created it initially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have different aspects of ourselves. So, yeah, some people talk of, a smaller self. We are identified to a smaller self or smaller version of ourselves, but we have what people call a higher self.
Yeah.
And so it could be a message from, this aspect of yourself.
Pay attention that something's going to happen because and so I started doing research on what these numbers meant.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, and then now I see it and whatever. It's like, wow, yeah, I agree with you. It's so incredible. But you also talk about, I'm going to go into all these. I love this stuff because I think this really, like I said, this is where we're going as a human species, and from a science, from a understanding spirituality, but science and spirituality together. I mean, it's so incredible. But you talk about non-local influence of intention on the living. What is that praying? Because praying, together as a group, we pray, and they've been able to show that makes a difference.
Yes, exactly. So if we are able to influence a physical electronic system like a random number generator, we might be able to do the same thing over what we call biological systems, living organisms. And this is exactly what the research is showing. And in the case of prayer, yeah, it's very interesting. Um, it's still controversial because some studies have produced negative results, but there were methodological problems with the studies. So, but more studies are showing an effect of intention, positive intention at a distance. So, like prayer.
But we could have negative intention too. I mean, like we could be worried,
Yes.
fearful. And when we're praying, if we're fearful that something's going to happen, that's the intention we could be causing to happen as well.
Yes.
Right?
Well,
it's an unconscious intention. Yeah. That's the issue.
Yeah, well, that's what is done in various cultures. Still, sorcerers can do that. And for the people who believe in those effects, they can be influenced and they can even die. So it's been reported in medical literature, some cases like this. But it can create also, so when it does that, for instance, you receive a bad news or there's a mistake about about you, about the result of an exam, medical exam, and they tell you, but it's a mistake, but they tell you because it has happened that you suffer from, let's say, a cancer, a liver cancer, and you have only 6 months to live or something like that. And these things have happened. And for instance, there was a guy at 73 in a New York hospital. He received such a misdiagnosis. He believed in it, and he died 4 or 5 months after that. But they performed an autopsy, and they looked at the liver and stomach and so on, and there was no cancer cell.
Yeah, that's incredible. There's so many stories like that where people,
yeah,
what you believe ends up happening, and that's why the power of positive thought has always been so important. The miracle of believing in yourself and believing
yes.
in that thought.
But the effect, the non-local effect, for instance, of a healer or a sorcerer or a witch, it seems to be to exist also. So you can accumulate these kind of effects based on what you're thinking or what you're believing. But yes, it's the same thing then with physical systems. We can influence non-locally at a distance biological organisms. So can be mice, rats, or even cells, in vitro cells or blood. There's been, I think thousands of studies that have been done in this field of research also.
It's incredible what we have the power of affecting.
Mm-hmm.
Now, delocalized consciousness, how do you explain what that is?
I personally don't, because to me it's not. I say that it's primordial or elementary, which means that in science, when we talk about, for instance, in physics of fundamental forces or elemental forces, we do not try to explain them because they come as a given, a primary principle in the universe. And to me, that, and to a growing number of colleagues, consciousness is considered as a primary aspect of the universe. And most of my colleagues, post-materialist colleagues, because now we use the term post-materialist, because to mark historically a transition towards something, a new type of science or worldview. And they believe, like I do, that what we call consciousness is primary and exists before matter.
Which is hard to get your head wrapped around, isn't it? But like
we
create the matter through our consciousness.
Right. But it's consciousness with an uppercase C. It's consciousness associated with something great. We do it at our level as humans, but not at to the same extent. But the principle is the same. We can create, like we just talked about. We can create with our minds, and we can create all sorts of effects within our bodies and outside the confines of our bodies. And we can develop these capacities through the control of attention and also intention.
And we already talked about that, the intention and what that means. And you talk a lot, and I've heard this a lot about how you and I want to get into Journeys to the Source so bad, number 8, but I'm gonna touch on it just a little bit and get back to a couple of things that you have in your book. But of having these experiences where you reach a consciousness where you become part of the whole, and you no longer have a sense of an individuality anymore.
Right.
And to a lot of people, that's scary, because then you lose, if you don't. But it's not scary in the people that have this experience. It's great. It's love. It's the greatest experience they've ever had. But when you think about it, it's almost like you lose who you are, but you don't, do you? You have who you are, plus you're part of that consciousness, right? I mean, it's kind of like both at the same time.
Well, I can respond to this as both an experiencer myself, because I've had this type of experience during my life a few times, and that's why I'm so interested in the field of neuroscience, but with regard to spirituality. And I met also several experiencers, people who've had mystical experiences, and you don't lose everything. You merge with something much greater, but at the same time, you keep your unicity,
your essence.
So
you never lose anything.
No,
it's just a greater experience.
Yes, and you bring something unique to the you can call that the consciousness with a big C, or the source of everything, or God, but you bring something, and you don't lose. You it's hard to explain with words because it's very abstract, but
yeah, it's hard, and that's why people change so fundamentally when they have that experience.
Absolutely.
I haven't had that experience. I wish I had, because people talk about how amazing it is, and so if it's that amazing, I sure the heck want it. But let's talk about chapter 6, which you say is the ultimate mystery. What's the ultimate mystery?
Death. Yeah. So according to mainstream neuroscience, death was the end of everything. And but now with we accumulate evidence all the time, strongly indicating that this is not the case at all. That death is a transition from one state of awareness to a greater state of awareness. It's like changing your costumes, or your dress, or your pants, or it's there's nothing to be afraid about this.
And that's the difference between our current scientific beliefs and atheism compared to what quantum physics and the real data. You can't ignore data. It's just kind of like, why are we ignoring data? We're doing that today in the medical world, and just ignoring huge amounts of data or making data up. But when you don't ignore and you look at the whole plethora of data that we have in front of us, it says that life does not end at death. And you talk about this in the next chapter where you talk about past lives.
Yes.
Which there are so many people that have past lives. And I want you to talk about this a little bit, but I also have I have so many science friends and that I talk to all the time. And Max Champy, who is just amazing. We talk about past life experiences where people go into these regression states and learn about their past lives, and that they'll come back with information that is absolutely incredible. And like if you do it with like you have your wife or your husband and wife do it separately, it's important if you do it separately, and then come back and compare notes. And so you can't, if you do it together, you can hear the other person saying stuff. But if you do it separately, there's no way you could, hear that. And it's amazing some of the stuff that you learn about each other. Like you've actually had experiences together. You can hear my dog barking in the background. I'm sorry.
No problem. I love them. Yes. And so you can access these memories through deep hypnosis, but sometimes people will experience some of these memories during deep spiritual experiences also. Sometimes
or children.
Yes, children. And so that's the most important source of information, because children are not totally programmed yet by cultural beliefs and society and so on and so forth. And so there's a very interesting program at the University of Virginia, and it was started in the late 60s by Dr. Ian Stevenson, and now it's Dr. Jim Tucker, a research psychiatrist, who is in charge of this program. And they have found, in their records, they have thousands of cases of children who were able to remember memories of previous lives. And very often the researchers were able to verify the information and to found, for instance, the previous parents and where the children was living before in the previous life, and so on and so forth. And so it's very hard to explain within the materialist framework. It doesn't work for these materialist thinkers. And so they will say, well, it's pure coincidence, or it does not exist, or it's a mistake, but they have to deny it because it directly challenged the materialist worldview.
Well, you almost, if they, even with their view, yeah, they have to ignore it. It gets back to it because there's nothing that can explain it. How can these children possibly have all these detailed memories of something that it's impossible for them to have memories of somebody else's life from 40 years ago that's in extreme detail.
Yes, and so they have to deny these phenomena because and these results, these findings, because otherwise they will feel a lot of cognitive dissonance, and it's not fun emotionally to feel cognitive dissonance. So they have to ignore as a strategy.
Yeah, because there's no other way to do it. Well, one thing that there's a quote in here that you say that even chance meetings are a result of karma. Things in life are fated by our previous lives. I love karma because I always say that karma doesn't lose an address, right? So like what you're doing now, right now, some of these guys that I've just, karma will not forget. And actually a lot of supposedly the cult that is doing a lot of bad things right now, they believe in karma, which is weird because why would they believe in karma and do the things that they're doing? So they're playing mental games with themselves, because later I believe that everyone will have to deal with what they've done, and karma doesn't lose an address. Yep. And your research shows this in some way. Can you talk a little bit about this?
Yes, it, it's the law of action and reaction, of causality. So what we know is that when, for instance, somebody is clinically dead and has what we call a near-death experience, or uh, a transient near-death experience, because the person is actually clinically dead, very often they will review their entire lives, and they will not only view what they've done, but what they talked, uh, their words, what feelings it produced on other people as well. And so, yes, it's this would seem to be this component of the afterlife would seem to be a learning tool to learn about this basic law, the law of action and reaction, or karma, as they say in the East. And it's a law that seems to be as fundamental as the fundamental forces of physics, like gravity, for instance. If you want to jump, over on top of a building, uh, what will happen in the following seconds. And so this would be as fundamental in the spiritual world than the physical laws that we know.
I find myself now when I can't behave the way that I want to behave, I just will retreat. Like I don't want to go there because I don't want to have to deal with. I can't be the person I want to be. And whereas younger, I didn't care. There's all sorts of bad things I probably did. And now I'm like, oh, it's so you change as you grow, but you still, I don't have the strength to necessarily be the person I want to be at all times right now. And I suppose that's the journey that we all take.
Yeah, but that's why what the psychologists call metacognition, or the capacity to investigate what's going on internally, is so important, because I do the same, exactly like you. And I think it's very important to do that in terms of our evolution of consciousness, individually, but also collectively as a species.
Yep, absolutely,
Mm.
as a species. And now my favorite is Journeys to the Source. I don't know if it's my favorite, but it is my favorite. But everything before it built up
Mm-hmm.
to this. Journeys to the Source. You just use an example of a journey to the source where you review everything that you've done. I've heard a lot of those kind of stories, but there's a lot of different examples that you gave, and you've seen this has all been documented, right?
Absolutely.
Talk
Yes,
about it.
yes. All of it. All of it. So it's not invented. It's not like if I decided to create stories or no, it's the only thing that I did it was to put everything together. And when you do that, then you come up with a new way of seeing ourselves and the world. You end up with a new worldview or paradigm, and that's what we're calling now a post-materialist paradigm.
Yeah, which is just so amazing that because there's so much more we can grow. And
Oh,
yeah, you say the root of most major religions come from these experiences.
mhm.
And people are scared because they don't want one religion, because if you just have people, it gets to the point where things get skewed and everybody forces you to believe in the same thing, and that is the root of evil, I think, is when you force.
That we see it now happening now.
Yeah, when you force people to do your way or no way
Yeah,
kind of thing. And the root of so many religions is such a beautiful thing, but then the religions get skewed and used to manipulate others,
unfortunately.
which I don't know why people have to go there, but it's really what so many religions
Mhm,
do. But it's so amazing that it all starts from these
mhm.
experiences, and there's so much beauty. That's why people keep going back to it, isn't
Yes,
it?
and that's also because deep within us, all of us, um, there's perfect love, perfect joy. That we have all this essence, the one, the all, God. It resides within us, deep within us, all of us, and so that's why we cannot we cannot go away, and that's why atheism doesn't make great strides. It's always been marginal, and so yes, I agree with you that religions they have created lots of problems, but they all start from these beautiful mystical experiences of the people who were at the origin of these religions.
Yeah, well, and the origin and the root of the religions are not what is expressed when they use it to manipulate others. It's really far away from that. And it's just not the same thing. Well, and I love the quote. I'm going to say this again because I think this was what would unite so many people of what this person came and realized that she was not defined by the terms of her culture, her gender, her beliefs, or the color of her skin, and realized that at that consciousness level, we are all the same, and that people, that's what they miss. And the materialistic world is what causes all this division. And if you transcend that, we're just all the same. And because I grew up, being a woman, I've experienced a lot of discrimination, especially in sports. Is where I just it was really bad. And not so much anymore for, I'm 50, so I experienced it a lot more than the girls do now. But you realize that you're not defined by that.
No.
It's not your division. So it's so great. We're all dealing with this, these cultural clashes and these gender clashes and these, color of your skin clashes. It's all BS.
Absolutely. Totally.
Yeah, it is. Your book is so beautiful. The merging of science and spirituality. I always say that science is the description of what is.
Yes.
It's not materialistic. Science is not materialism. Science is just the quest to understand what is.
Yes, it's been hijacked as being antagonistic to spirituality and religions, but it is not. And all the founders of modern science, like Isaac Newton, for instance, or Galileo Galilei, Descartes, and all these people, they were deeply spiritual people.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because they realized it, because their quest of understanding the science caused them to understand that even more. Because I know that my quest to understand the world and the way it is and has made me more spiritual. And I don't think I was all that spiritual when I was young. I was forced to do all these religious things. I grew up in a religious environment, which gave me an understanding and education of it, but it almost pushed me away from it in a lot of ways. Right?
Yeah.
And now my quest
same story.
Yeah. And now my quest to learn of what the world really is has really made me more spiritual. That unforced, not being forced from the outside, but from the inside of my quest of truth and knowledge has really grown my spirituality. But it came from my source, not, from me, not from somebody forcing something upon me.
That's totally different. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, and it's so much stronger and means so much more. Okay, so where can people get this book? Because it's just such a great, it's so great because it is a journey of understanding.
Well, it's on now. It's on Amazon, Amazon.com. I know that you can get it through this, and it will be in bookstores at various places all over the Anglophone countries.
Excellent. Okay, so where can people learn more about you?
Me, or you can go to dr.mario.beauregard at .com. Yes, this is my website.
And I'll have the link below in the show notes. Okay. And if they're watching that on video, they can see it there. And now, do you have a link to buy the book on your website as well?
No, I don't have yet.
Okay, you will. By the time this airs, you'll probably hopefully have that. That's important. Okay, excellent. And thank you. Will you stay after for my members?
Okay.
And do a quick little thing for them.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much.